Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about how you can live, work, and travel at the same time. Today I wanted to answer some of your questions and see if I can help set you up to see if it's actually a possibility for you to live, work, and travel at the same time. Currently I'm living in Lisbon. I've been here since early January, so I've been here for about 3.5 months now. Last year I lived in Barcelona for 4 months, but previously, my home nation is Oslo in Norway at the moment, and I'm from the UK, right? So I got a lot of questions sometimes about how am I traveling and working, because I'm still working as much as I am if I were at home, and I'm still earning the same income, and I'm traveling and working at the moment. And how am I making that possibility? You are most likely working from home right now, right? Working from home is about working from wherever you work best from, right? So I know many of my friends have moved back in with their parents, even given up their rents while they can't travel and things like that to get out into the country. I have friends who've rented houses together outside of the city in London and all around the world. Meaning that, you can work from wherever you call home. Home doesn't have to be your home city or your home nation. And I've seen so many people now take the advantage that this unique opportunity we have right now during the global period that we're in right now to live and work in a different city, in a different nation. So I'm going to go through some key points that you need to ask yourself before you set yourself up to do that. And those are these. I think the first one is a really important message to get across, and I hope you take this with you today, that there is absolutely no reason, there is zero reason that you shouldn't be doing this. There's nothing that should hold you back, least your employer. I mean, I totally understand before everything happened in 2020 and all this kind of stuff that, your employer would typically, obviously, wouldn't be able to employ you if you live somewhere else, right? If it's a British-based company, you're living in London, or you're in New York with an American company, it's very difficult to work somewhere else, right? This remote work concept was quite alien. It was really done for sort of freelancers back then, right? But now obviously the whole world has been sped up to accept remote work and free work. And I think we need to get away from this term remote work, because it's not like you're in a remote village or in a remote desert island. You're like fully connected with fast Wi-Fi. You could be in a remote village, but guess what? We live in a world where most remote villages now actually have Wi-Fi. What's holding you back from doing this? It's probably down to the fact that you worried what your colleagues or your bosses will think if you tell them you're going to move. If you live in London, right, and you're employed by a British company, would you tell that company that you're going to move to a new flat in the same city? You probably wouldn't. You wouldn't ask for permission to move to a new flat, right? You're moving home, taking that logic and working from wherever you call home, right? So wherever you call home is where you're working from home from. So if you want to move that home to Lisbon or to Barcelona or to Malaga, why can't you? You're in the same time zone, most likely, plus 1 hour or so. You've got great Wi-Fi. You're probably going to be living better, feeling better. So why can't you actually go there and work there? I feel like a lot of people hold themselves back because they worry about the what their colleagues will think, right? So firstly, you need to get yourself out of that mindset that people are going to look down on you or judge you or be jealous, right? The reality is people will always be jealous, and hopefully you won't have too many of your colleagues that will make your life harder for you because they're jealous of what you're doing. But in reality, it comes down to clear communication, right? So I don't believe that you should have to ask permission to leave. One key difference I'm making right now is that you're not employing yourself, you're employed by someone else. Because I can make a separate video for people who are freelancers or employ themselves basically. But assuming that you work for someone, I think you should make it very clear. It comes down to clear communication about what you're going to do. That, you've relocated, you're going to relocate to Lisbon for X amount of time frame. You've set everything up so that there will be no difference to your life currently where you are doing your job in the city that you're based. Talk about this with your colleagues and your bosses and say, hey, I'm thinking about taking this unique opportunity that I have right now. Instead of just working from my flat in whatever city you live in or working from your parents' place, relocating to a location which will just be good for you in general, to be out in a new environment, in a new climate. You're still going to do as much work as you do there. You're still going to be as online as you are right now. It really just comes down to your availability. You just need to make sure yourself is always available, as you do already, but also don't guilt trip yourself. Don't feel like you now have to be overperforming to prove and thank your team and your colleagues for letting you do this. Just get out of that mindset that you shouldn't have to ask permission. You should inform them and be clear and communicate what you're going to do and where you're going to go, how long you're going to go for, where you're going to be staying. But bear that in mind that you wouldn't ask permission to move flats in the same city, and I don't see any difference between moving your new home to some other city outside of your home nation. All right, the second one, which is quite an important one, is to understand how much time you can travel for without having any tax obligations in the country you're living in. My assumption is that you're going to keep your income from the company that you're employed in your home nation or your home city where you've been living, right? So you're not going to register yourself in a tax register here. You're not going to register yourself in a medical practice here. You're basically just going to come, live, and work for a period of time. Now, there's one rule, and I'm going to make a longer form video about this another time, about tax rules and all this kind of stuff, because I know a lot of you are really interested in that. Let me know in the comments if you want a video about that, because it's actually a really interesting topic. Something I've learned so much about, I've had to in the last 6 months. But one thing to really keep in mind is there's a thing called the 183-day rule. If you spend over 183 days of a calendar year in one country, that country could, if they decided to and if they wanted to, actually have a claim to your income tax. Basically, because you've been living in that country, benefiting from the system for over 183 days, over half a year, they can claim your tax, right? So you don't want to get into that argument with between two nations. Now, most European countries have a thing called a double tax treaty, meaning that if you're paying tax to one country and another country asks you for tax or to prove your income and your tax and where you're paying taxes, you can show them your taxes being paid to the UK, to Norway, to anywhere. So for example, if Lisbon called me, the tax authorities called me and said, Portugal, prove that you're paying tax somewhere or we're going to try and tax you in Lisbon, I would say, yeah, here's my tax return in Norway. And they go, all right, well, they have a double tax treaty, so that's fine. So I wouldn't be liable to pay taxes in Portugal, providing I live here under 183 days. But don't get into the wrong side of taxing. You're going to, there's two things that are certain in life: death and taxes, right? You're going to pay taxes to someone somewhere at some time. Don't change your tax residency. It just overcomplicates things and it can make things a lot more difficult for your employer as well. Meaning that, number one, being communication and having to ask permission to leave that you shouldn't have to, then you might actually have to because your employer might want to employ you in a different country through a different entity. It just makes the whole thing more complicated. All right, the third one is insurances, right? So you should have, I know when you're young and you're in your 20s and things like that, we don't think about like insurances and life insurance and medical care. I only really now in my just turned 30 have really like sorted all that stuff out in my life. Now I actually pay for, life insurance. I pay for medical insurances and all these types of things, right? So don't be a fool. You never need insurance until you need it, right? And then you need it, and then you've lost your laptop, and it costs you $2,000, $3,000 to replace it, or you have to go to a doctor's and things like that. So make sure you sort your medical insurance up before you leave. Also, bear in mind that some medical insurances will cover you, and some business medical insurances will cover you, but they typically only cover you for for example, my business insurance only covers me traveling for 10 weeks. You can extend that though. So I contacted them and I said, can you extend it? They extended it for 18 weeks. That worked for me, right? And then my personal insurance, again, I just had to make sure that I'm traveling within the rules, that I'm insured for a specific amount of time. So just check all those types of things. If you don't have insurances, get it. And the fourth one is money, right? So you're going to be spending another currency most likely in the country you're going to be living in. If you're from the UK or if you're from the Nordics, obviously if you're in Europe, you're spending euros already, so it's a lot easier for you. But I got because I'm spending Norwegian kroners. I get my income in Norwegian kroners, and I'm spending euros. So I got the Revolut Black Metal card, which is amazing because it's also got extra insurances on that. I definitely think that I'm like overinsured, which I think is not a bad thing to do. It's not costing me a huge amount of money, but I pay 140 NOK or about 15 euros a month for that card. And it also gives me like excess travel insurance for if I'm renting cars. And specifically with the money aspect, it doesn't charge me so I put NOK into it. And when I spend euros, I just get spot rate. So it just does a spot rate. Also, if I take cash out, it's got I can take, I think there's limitless transactions on the black metal, but they also have cards that you don't have to pay for. So look into number 26, Monzo. I've got the Revolut one, and there's a bunch of digital banks. I'll link a few below. Just get clued up, and even if it's only charging a little bit your own bank, it builds up. If you're going to be spending more money here, if you're spending on accommodation here as well, that's going to be large transactions, a few hundred euros, thousands plus every single month. It starts to add up if they start taking 2% to 5% every single time. All of a sudden, every month, that's like a couple of dinners, right? So just be smart about the money aspect, get a digital bank, and get used to using it. And that's just about it. So I've actually got another 10 points that I wanted to include that I made when I recorded this, but it was like going to be a 30-minute video. So I split it in two. So I'm going to release another video tomorrow, which is basically my top 10 questions to ask and think about when you're going to find accommodation in that city that you pick, basically. Super interesting ones about what's that, like secret ones I've learned from Airbnb in different cities around the world. So anyway, I'll release that tomorrow. Look out for that one. I'll link it to this one afterwards as well. Thanks for watching this episode. I'll see you in tomorrow's episode, I guess. Have a nice